Good evening and welcome to the June 22nd, 2021 Council meeting of the Region of Queens Municipality. Are there any changes or approval to the agenda as presented? Seeing none, I so ask for a motion that we accept the agenda. Moved by Councilor Gidney, seconded by Councilor Charlton. We approve the agenda. All in favor? Signify, oh, there's Carl. Signify by raising your hand. Carried, passed. There are no presentations. Any petitions to table? Public question comment session. I remind anyone wishing to make a public comment or question to please put their hand up and please give your name and your civic number before you begin.
Yes, Mayor Norman, Leon Robertson, College Street in Liverpool. Couple of comments here if I could. Under 9.3, your council meetings, you're going to limit them to one per month during July and August. I think that's probably a good idea. And of course, if something comes up that's urgent, you can always call a special meeting. The under 9.4, the memorandum of understanding there for the use of showers and what have you in places throughout the municipality when it's going to be dry, and it looks like this summer could be a dry summer, and I think that's a good idea. So hopefully that will get approved here today. Now, the other comment I had is your policies there that was put over from your last meeting, policy number 90 and 91 with respect to workplace and human rights information and so on. They're very comprehensive. Hopefully the councils had taken time to read them and are ready to approve them or have comments on them. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Robertson. Does anyone else wish to make a public comment or question? Okay.
Did you hear me?
Approval of the minutes. Approval of the, someone's got their, there. Approval of the minutes. Approval of the regular council minutes of June 8th, 2021. A motion to approve those minutes moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Hawks. All those in favor?
Yes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Muse. Contrary? Passed. Approval of the public hearing minutes, June 8th, 2021. A motion to accept them, moved by Councillor Marrow, seconded by Councillor Gidney. Are there any questions regarding those minutes? Seeing none, I will ask for all in favor.
Yes.
Contrary? Pass. Thank you, Deputy Muse. Dangerous and unsightly, nothing to report. Economic development, 8.1. There is a recommendation in your package. If someone would so make that recommendation, please. Councillor Romero. Oh, Councillor Romero, you have to unmute yourself.
I move that the Council of Region of Queens Municipality enter into the proposed 3-year lease agreement with Early Childhood Development Intervention Association, ECDIS.
And that is seconded by Councillor Brown. Do you have any questions regarding this? Or Steve Burns, you are here, Manager of Events Promotion Sponsorship and also doing contracts. Do you have any comments to make?
Just that the group has accepted a $9.50 per square foot 3-year lease agreement upon your approval, and that's an increase from the $9 per square foot rate that they had for their previous 3-year agreement. Solid tenant, and yes, please approve them.
Thank you. Do any councillors have any questions of Mr. Burns? No questions? I think we've been through this. I'll ask for the question then. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary?
Yes.
Thank you, Deputy Muse. Again, passed. Moving along, corporate services. 9.1. There is a recommendation in your package. If someone would like to so make that recommendation. Councillor Brown,
I recommend that the Council of the Region of Queens Municipality approve policy 90, respectful workplace.
seconded by Councillor Hawks. Are there any questions respecting this before I ask for consideration of the motion? Councillor Gidney, and then Councillor Brown. Councillor Gidney, you need to unmute yourself.
There, is that better?
That is perfect.
Thank you, thank you. I have a couple questions concerning the existing policies that are in place. Some relate to this and some relate to the other. Sexual harassment, violence in the workplace, employee discipline, and grievances. How do we repeal these? Like, what procedure, what do we have to do to have those repealed?
That is a good question. I noticed in our document that we will be repealing policy 25. That is part
Yes.
of this thing. So Chris, what about the other policies to which Councillor Gidney refers to that are at least 25 years old and get encompassed in this?
The process to review policies is currently underway, but it's we as council's aware, we don't have a dedicated staff person for that, so it gets done off the side of various different employees' desks. And during the next year or two, we'll hopefully make our way through most of these and update them. So some of them aren't necessarily in conflict, but some of them are just outdated and not relevant anymore. Some of them have no bearing on policy 90. And others may have small portions of it, but policy 90 speaks for itself without any impact on the other policies.
Thank you, CEO McNeil. Councillor Brown, you also had a question?
I had a few comments about this. When I read through it, I think it's great policy. It's something that we need, but a couple of the places where it specifically says employee to employee, but it doesn't give any description on how, if a counselor feels that they're being harassed or anything like that. So I'm wondering, it's kind of open-ended one way. So in, let me see, where was I? On the informal process, if you want me to go through them, to make a list.
On the internal process, which is page.
Sure,
See it, yes.
must be 4 or 5. Number B, it says an employee should seek assistance from their immediate supervisor, director of corporate services. It doesn't say anything about who a counselor would direct their issues to. I'm assuming it would be you as the mayor.
Yes, unless it was me, that was the
Right, yeah,
harasser, in
yeah.
which case you would go to Deputy Mayor Muse.
yeah, but it's not spelled out in the policy. I think it should be.
Mayor Norman, may I interject?
Yes, you may, CEO McNeil.
The exact next line addresses council.
Council members, the discussion should be held with the mayor in case of an issue with the mayor, the deputy mayor.
That I take that to read that if a person has an issue with a council member, that they take that up with the mayor, not that a council member who has an issue with an employee, who do they take it up with?
Well, if you read that, I read that to read a discussion in cases of issues involving council members. So if I had an issue with the staff, that would be an issue that I have as a council member. So I interpreted that that's how that works, because it does definitely state an issue with the mayor. So you're stating that you read this to say, if you as a council member feel you are being treated disrespectfully by a staff member, you do not see that as involving yourself?
Well, I mean, it starts off saying, and if A is not possible, an employee should seek assistance from their immediate supervisor. But if it's with a council member, then they go to the mayor. It doesn't say who, if a council member has a problem with a staff member, who they deal with.
So I think you're misunderstanding the
Okay,
clause. So
it could very well be.
yeah, so staff deal with staff, council members deal with staff, deal with council members. So in option A, should the employee, if option A isn't possible, the employee should seek assistance from the staff member. The employee would never seek assistance from the mayor or another elected official. So staff deal with staff. In the follow-up section, the case involving a council member. So as a council member, if you have a concern about another council member of a staff member, you would not go to the CAO, you would not go to another staff member. Your obligation is to go to the mayor.
Okay. Okay, just what, it wasn't very clear to me. I just wanted to make sure on that one. Under the section, two pages after that, under retaliation, it said any employee who uses retaliation or discrimination against a coworker or another employee because the person brought forward a complaint or because an employee acted as a witness, etc., may be in breach discipline up to and including termination. Then it says any council member who uses retaliation in any manner shall be subject to any consequences determined by the council under its code of conduct.
Right.
There's nothing there that says if an employee retaliates against a councillor.
So in the first paragraph, any employee who uses retaliation, discrimination against a coworker, comma, council member, do you want the word council member added there?
I think so, yes.
Council member, that's just a simple
Or
thing.
just after another employee, we could put a comma and have elected official.
Does council feel that that is a friendly amendment, or do you feel it's going to need a motion for an amendment to it? Can we just add that as a friendly amendment? I see Councillor Marmero nodding her head. Councillor Fancy, can we just put that in as a friendly amendment? Okay, so any employee who uses retaliation, discrimination against a coworker, another employee, or council member?
Yeah.
All right, so that has been corrected. Anything else, Councillor Brown?
Just one more. Under the consequences on the next page,
Yes,
it says employees who are determined after an investigation to be in breach of this policy, and it lays out the
right.
discipline action, but it doesn't have anything there saying in that section what counselors we should be referred to our code of conduct.
It says further back, I believe,
Yeah,
everything that mentions council.
It did at the very start under the scope, but I think it should be there under consequences, that we should underline that there are consequences for counselors as well, but what those consequences are.
You can't spell out specific consequences, because if you look at our code of conduct, which I had right here.
Right, but that would be the consequence of this action, is that it goes to our code of conduct and policy 74.
So did you have a sentence prepared or anything that you wish to put in there?
Let me see. Counselors will be referred to policy 74 code of conduct.
So counselors who are determined after an investigation has been completed to be in breach of this policy will be subject to disciplinary action according to the code of conduct.
That's right. I think it spells out that we are to be held accountable as well.
CEO McNeil, do you think there's an amendment needed for that one?
I would suggest a motion or an amendment that adopts all the changes that are recommended by Councillor Brown to be included as changes.
Would someone like to make that motion? Councillor Romero? Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
I move to amend the changes that Councillor Brown made.
So therefore, Councillor Romero is making a motion that the changes recommended by Councillor Brown, which include adding or council member under retaliation, and also a sentence under consequences. Councillors who are determined after investigation has been completed to be breach of this policy will be subjected to reprimand according to the code of conduct. Is that correct, Councillor Brown?
That sounds correct to me.
Perfect. So we need a seconder for that motion. Seconded by Councillor Gidney. Question on,
Madam Mayor,
yeah, Councillor.
Madam Mayor, I think the second one he wants to put in, I think we got to do it the same way as the first one, council members, not councilors.
Right.
Because councilors doesn't include the mayor.
Okay, right.
Right.
Elect council members. Council members. We'll just make that as a friendly amendment. So it's council members who are determined. Any questions on the sub amendment? On the amendment? If not, I'll ask for a motion on the amendment to include those suggestions made by Councillor Brown. Contrary? Back to the main motion as amended. Any other questions on the main motion? Councillor Fancy.
Yes, the one thing that kind of stood out to me, and of course, sometimes it's just a matter of reading and understanding what we're talking about. When it talks about the formal process,
Yes.
and on the formal process page on A, it says if a complaint cannot be resolved through the informal process, a complainant may file a formal complaint in writing on the form attached as Appendix A and submit it directly to the Director of Corporate Services. So it looks like if something can't be resolved, that it goes to the Director of Corporate Services, who then will contact the mayor if it concerns. I could read some different parts down to here, but it seems that they would tell the mayor if it was concerned a councillor, but then it would be investigated and everything all under corporate services, which really should go back to me, would go back to our code of conduct, which we would do that ourselves as being not really part of the region, but being elected officials. Does that make sense?
Okay, so Councillor Fancy. if you-
I don't think that the Director of Corporate,
Okay, so if you look under the complaint resolution process, and it discusses that complaints will come
Right.
through formal or informal process, you will notice in that second
right,
paragraph that any complaint against a member of council be forwarded to the mayor. So the Director of
Right.
Corporate Services is always left out and is never involved in any complaints involving a member of council. Director of Services is only responsible for staff and complaints against staff, complaints against councilors go according to the complaint resolution process. Those complaints go to council. They go to the mayor, and then if they're deemed legitimate for complaints, they would go according to our code of conduct. That would be discussed in camera. And then any action decided against the elected official, the action against them is discussed in an open council meeting. That's in our code of conduct.
Yes,
Okay, so our Director of Corporate Services would not be involved in complaints involving members of council.
okay, so if there were a complaint against the counselor, it would be forwarded to the mayor, who then in turn would go through the process with the code of conduct of number 74,
Correct.
and it would be resolved within that system.
And that is correct, is it not, CAO McNeil?
Mostly, just to clarify, the actual application. So if an application comes forward, it does in fact go to the Director of Corporate Services. And in the case of a council member, the Director of Corporate Services simply makes sure the application is on the right form. So if it applies to policy 90, that individual just makes sure it's on the right form. If it applies to policy 91, the next one we'll discuss, then they just make sure it's on the right form, as long as it's in order and it's the right process. And the Director of Corporate Services might say to the individual, you're aware that there's an informal process. Have you attempted that, or you're interested in that? And if the person says no, or they have and it didn't work, then the Director of Corporate Services would immediately forward it on to the mayor, yes. So the Director of Corporate Services is not directly involved with any investigation, not directly involved with deciding whether the complaint is legitimate or not. Their process really is to determine if it fits the criteria of the policy to go forward as a formal complaint to the mayor or the deputy mayor, as the case may be, for discussion under policy 74, which is the code of conduct.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, I'm going to ask for the question. All those in favor? Contrary? Passed. 9.2 deals with policy 91, human rights and harassment. There is a recommendation in the package. If someone would like to make that recommendation. Councillor Hawks.
I move that the Council of Regional Queens Municipality approve policy 91, human rights and harassment.
And that is seconded by Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions of CAO McNeil or any comments respecting policy 91? Councillor Brown.
The exact same I'd like to see the exact same amendments put in this one in the same lines as the last policy.
So therefore, it's under. Okay, so you should make a motion. You should do a motion, Councillor Brown, for that.
I move that we amend this policy in the same effect as policy 90 was done, with informal process B to include elected officials, and under consequences to include councillors who are determined to be in breach to be referred to the code of conduct.
Is there a seconded for that amendment? Councillor Gidney. Are there any questions on the amendment? If not, I'll ask for questions on the amendment. All those in favor?
Yes.
Thank you, Deputy Muse. Any comments or questions on the main motion as amended?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Deputy Muse?
I don't understand why we didn't make this just one policy, like instead of having two separate ones. Can the CAO explain why we have to have two?
Yes, CEO McNeil?
Because they're really two separate issues. One deals with legislative, a much more strict requirement, whereas the other one is the non-legislative requirement. So the respectful workplace doesn't have any direct connection to legislation, whereas the human rights one has very specific terms and conditions as to what would be actions or words that would contravene the Human Rights Act. So they're very different. And simply having one policy that's 30 pages long, I expect no one's going to read it. Having two smaller policies, and if someone has a specific concern or issue, it's much easier for them to get through the policy and the process to understand what the process is, as opposed to having to go through 30 pages of documents and being frustrated and walking away.
Deputy Muse, does that answer your question?
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions on the motion as amended? If not, I'll ask for the vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary. Thank you, Deputy Muse. Passed. 9.3. Regular meetings of council. There is a recommendation in your package. If someone would like to make that recommendation, please.
I can.
Councilor Romero,
I move that the Council of Region of Queens Municipality only hold one meeting per month during July and August of 2021, with the meetings taking place the second Tuesday of each month.
seconded by Councilor Hawks. Oh, Councilor Muse, you had your light on. Sorry about that. I'm gonna watch for your light next time. Any questions on this matter? Deputy Mayor Muse. Deputy Mayor, did you have a question, Deputy Mayor Muse? No.
I'm sorry. I had phone problems. What was that, Madam Mayor?
I said, I thought that you was indicating you had a question on this.
No,
but
I seconded. Yeah, you never heard me.
No, I didn't. Any questions or comments respecting decreasing to one council meeting a month during July and August? Knowing that we can have emergency council meeting on an emergency matter, a special council meeting can be called with a 3-day notice, and there are no major upcoming planning matters that we know of. Councillor Charlton.
So this is a pretty common practice in the past with the region of Queens as well, among many other municipalities, if I'm correct.
I believe the region did not do this last year. Some municipalities ceased their council meetings altogether. So it's up to the individual municipalities as to how they wish to do this.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further questions, I'm going to ask for the vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary.
Yes.
Thank you, Deputy Muse. So that was anonymous. Unanimous, anonymous, unanimous. And 9.4, memorandum of understanding with respect to the use of community business facilities for public showers. If someone would like to make that motion. Councilor Brown.
I move that the Region of Queens Municipality enter into a purchase and sale agreement. Oops, sorry, got the wrong one. Page ahead. That the Region of Queens Municipality approve the draft memorandum of understanding respecting the use of community and business facilities for public showers during a period of extreme dry weather. And further, that council authorize the mayor and chief administrative officer to enter into any agreements related to this memorandum of understanding with appropriate local community organizations and businesses that are interested.
Seconded by Councilor Gibney. And you will notice that within the packet is the memorandum of understanding that was created by EMO and our staff. And we did budget $30,000 for this item in our budget, understanding from past summers the difficulties that we can encounter due to dry weather. Are there any questions or comments? Councilor Brown.
Under the first page of memorandum of understanding under community facility, it defines it as a building owned and operated by a community group. would that limit the Liverpool Fire Hall from being able to offer showers to people in the summer? Because they don't actually own the building. They operate the fire hall, but they don't own the building.
I do not think it would, I don't think we would exclude them from that. CEO McNeil, what would your interpretation of that be?
Yeah, we would not exclude them. If they were eligible and interested, we would not exclude them.
Okay, I just wasn't sure with the way the wording was, if it would exclude them from being able to apply for it, so.
But you will notice that in public shower facilities B, it does say that where the facility owner, it's $100 per day for facility owners where the public shower facilities are paid for in whole or in part by the municipality.
Okay.
Correct. Councilor Romero.
Will Queen's Place still offer showers as well?
I'm assuming they would, but that would be a question of our CAO.
That would be correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I personally think that this is a very good policy and we were wise to budget this money. We hear from the people in our communities during the summer about lack of water, lack of shower facilities, and henceforth we will be prepared for the summer if this motion so passes.
I think Councilor Charlton has her hand up.
Councilor Charlton?
I'm just wondering, just for clarity purposes in regards to Councilor Brown's comment, if that maybe potentially couldn't be revised just where the Liverpool Fire Hall is in a building that is owned by the region. I understand in the second part about the reimbursements. And I realize that we're saying we won't exclude them, but I'm just wondering if it couldn't be revised for easy reading. And also, does the Liverpool Fire Hall currently have showers that would be accessible for the public?
I have no idea. This was about all community facilities in like specific. So you want it in there in paper just in case there's any contrary is that what you want? So
Well, I'm just thinking they're the only fire hall that they're in our building. So just for clarity purposes in regards to
and
account.
we do include a building owned and operated by the region of Queens or a community group. Do you believe
Sure.
that would satisfy that?
I think so.
And that would also include Queen's Place. Therefore, the question about Queen's Place, Councilor Romero would then be added. Do we see that as a friendly amendment or one requiring a motion?
May I ask what the proposed amendment is?
So under A, where it says community facility, a building owned and operated by the region of Queens or a community group.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't enter into an agreement with ourselves. That would be redundant.
But if we said owned and operated by the region of Queens, that would then cover the Liverpool Fire Hall. Though we don't operate the Liverpool Fire Hall. Can we not just leave it as a matter of honesty? And that we all know that we are including them?
I just don't understand why it couldn't be reworded. Just if those aren't the proper words, open to other suggestions.
Yeah. And I guess if I may, Mayor Norman, staff reviewed that and couldn't come up with the wording because there would be many facilities in the community likely that if it was a building owned or operated, there may be a case where we would not want to enter into an agreement with certain types of organizations that simply own it but don't operate it, or the other way, or vice versa, that operate it but don't own it.
Could we just put something in there, Mr. McNeil, for the Liverpool Fire Hall instead of saying owned or operated, like a building owned or operated?
Okay. Do you have a suggestion? Counselor Charlton?
I'm just wondering if, I understand what he's saying, so how would we put it in there for just the fire hall? The Liverpool Fire Hall, since they're the only exception?
I guess if we believe they're the only exception, then a building owned or operated by a community group, comma, Liverpool Fire Department. Or,
Okay.
yeah, and Liverpool Fire Department with the required infrastructure.
And Liverpool Fire Department.
Be the Liverpool Fire Hall,
Liverpool Fire Hall,
because the hall is the building.
right.
Thank you.
Is that a friendly amendment, or is that a major change that needs a motion for an amendment? I guess it is. I mean, we knew it included them, but it wasn't there in black and white. And we'd hate to think that they were being not included. So if someone would like to make an amendment to include and Liverpool Fire Hall in definition A, community facility, Councillor Brown?
I would propose that we amend the document to include Liverpool Fire Hall under the community facilities.
Seconded by Councillor Charlton. And we do this knowing that this was made to intend to include them, because there is reference to that in number B. So this is not that we excluded them and we're now including them. They always were included. Councillor Fancy?
Since we wrote it like that, I'm just trying to make sure there's nothing else that could come up to cause us grief. Like, I think like the search and rescue, do they have shower facilities that
We
could
have
be
to
used?
take out the amendment. So we're dealing with the one amendment, Liverpool Fire Hall right now.
Okay,
Okay.
that's why before I voted on that, that's why I wanted to say is there like something like that is there other things before I vote yes on this, that we don't have to go and change it again? Just,
Yes, there, if I may, Mayor Norman, yes, there are other facilities that would be in the same boat, correct?
So do CEO McNeil, we know they were all included before. So if we start listing one, do we then need to include all the others? And if we start doing this and we don't pass this tonight, we will not have water shower facilities available in July.
I guess from staff's perspective, we discussed this and with the MO, and we weren't comfortable narrowing it down or listing certain ones because we know we'd probably miss somebody. And so we know there are other ones out there like ground search and rescue who may want to generate a little bit of revenue and may have some showers. I'm not sure what their situation is. We don't think Liverpool has public shower capabilities, but they could develop them in the near future if they wish to, I guess. And there's probably other facilities too that Hank Snow Museum we own and have a lease with the Hank Snow. I'm not sure I don't think they have public shower facilities, but they could put them in. So there's lots of other opportunities of properties that we own that wouldn't necessarily qualify if you use the strict interpretation. And so that's why I'm saying staff have discussed this in detail to try to come up, and that was the best wording we could come up with, recognizing in good faith those ones that the municipality owns. We would include if we believe they had the ability and had the proper water test and septic system to be able to handle the service.
So could we therefore, just on this amendment, if we were to turn that down and to simply introduce one that says operated and owned by a community group, comma, and or the region of Queens, because that would include all the properties that we own that we lease out, or or allow other groups to use? CEO McNeil, would that work? I guess that's a question of council. I mean, do you want to risk finding ourselves identifying one group and then leaving out others? Councillor Brown,
Can I withdraw my motion?
you
And
can.
then
with
we
the
can
approval of your-
discuss, then we can go back and discuss the main issue of all the places that we have. So I withdraw my motion.
And your seconder for that was Councillor Guinea, your approval of that?
Yes.
You're all, okay,
Not sure if I did it, but yes.
fine. So we've withdrawn that identification of one unit, understanding there's other properties that we own and we either leased or we have longstanding agreements with them. So how do you want them included? Is it simply and other properties owned / leased by the region of Queens? Councillor Brown?
If we could change it to a building owned and operated by a community group or owned by the region of Queens and operated by a community group.
Oh, that works. Or owned by the region of Queens and operated by a community group. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Charlton. Any questions on that amendment? If not, I'll ask for a question on the amendment. All those in favor? Contrary? So we're back to the main motion as amended. Are there any questions on the main motion as amended? Seeing none, I'm going to ask for the question. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary? Thank you, Deputy Muse. Contrary? Passed. The last item on our agenda this evening deals with sale of municipal land. There is a motion, and then we will ask for some clarification or description from Director McLeod, who's joined us. So make a recommendation, please. Councillor Gidney, in whose district this is.
I move that Region of Queens Municipality enter into a purchase agreement and sale agreement with Maurice and Judy Westaver to convey a portion of municipal property identified as PID number 700-29947 for a purchase price of 60 cents per square foot. And all costs associated with this transaction be borne by Morris and Judy Westaver.
Thank you. And that's seconded by Councillor Brown. Oh, Councillor Brown. Councillor McLeod, Director McLeod, do you want to just give us a brief background?
Sure, Mayor Norman. Yeah, we've received a request from Morris and Judy Westaver to acquire a small parcel of land that abuts their property at 698 Main Street in Liverpool. The municipal land in question is actually part of the former CNR rail line on the west side of the Mersey River. The Westavers have recently had their property surveyed, at which time it was determined that there are a number of encroachments of driveways and structures that actually are on municipal lands. So the lands for the municipality are currently being utilized as the Trestle Trail walking trail. However, the surface of the trail is approximately 10 feet in width with some landscaping on either side. The whole width of the right-of-way, the former CN line, is 66 feet in width. So staff has looked at the request and are of the opinion that a parcel or a portion of these lands could be conveyed with minimal impact on the municipality's use of the trestle trail for public purposes. So I guess in consideration of requests such as these under the Municipal Government Act, we are required to sell land at fair market value. And although we have not conveyed parcels or portions of the former CN line, the municipality in the past has conveyed portions of street right-of-ways. So looking at, I guess, prior precedent in considering such requests, staff are comfortable in conveying approximately 3,400 square feet of municipal lands to the West Avers for the purchase price of 60 cents a square foot, plus all associated costs with the land transaction.
Thank you. Director McLeod, are there any questions or comments? Councillor Gidney.
Yes, I met with the West Avers and went over this with them. And when they purchased the property, they incorrectly assumed some of the property was theirs. So when they did the measurements and they put everything up, and all of a sudden they determined that they weren't. So that's when they came back with this. And I support this 100%. It is of the land is of no use to the municipality. It doesn't affect the walking trail. So I think it's a good thing for everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, you are very correct in that. And I believe Brian Hatt has made it clear that that former CN right-of-way of 66 feet is not needed for the trail. They need basically, like Director McLeod said, or the region of Queens only really requires 10 feet. And maybe a bit more. So those side banks, it's wonderful that we can give them or sell them, because we have sold road right-of-ways in that neighborhood before this. So it's good that we can make the West Avers feel comfortable and they own their own land, and all will be well.
Yes.
Any other questions of Director McLeod? Councillor Brown?
I just had a question that in the letter from the West Avers, they were requesting 2,190 square feet, and we're transferring 3,400 square feet. Was just a difference in the way they measured it, or was it something we determined that it was a better use to give them full use of their property?
Director McLeod?
Yeah, the actual area, the surveyor that the West Avers had contracted to survey the property actually did some formal calculations after the fact and determined that the area required to eliminate the encroachments was 3,385 square feet, as opposed to what Mr. and Mrs. Westaver had calculated at the 2,190 square feet. So the surveyors determined the exact square footage.
Okay, that sounds great. And I think this is a wonderful way to help people have access to their property and gain some security of their land. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will ask for the vote. All those in favor?
Yes.
Contrary? Thank you, Deputy Muse. Contrary? And therein marks the end of this evening's council agenda. I would like to thank the guests who attended, and to councillors, thank you for supporting the one council meeting a month. Staff will be very appreciative of that. And Councillor Brown, did you have a comment? Oh, he's saying goodbye.
No, we still had item 14 reports, council implementation.
Sorry about that. We did.
Oh, sorry.
Council implementation report. And you'll notice that this is getting thinner and thinner, which means that motions are being dealt with. And was there anything outstanding that anyone wanted to question?
No.
I think so.
Fine. Yeah. I personally find this a really good way of keeping track of motions and that they're being dealt with, so.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, Counselor Brown, for that. I had put it up there. And on that note, goodbye, and we'll see you on the second Tuesday in July at 9 a.m.
Thank you.